A Long and Silent Scream. A Science Fiction Thriller. By A.R. Knight. Part 1. Fresh Identity. Chapter 1. My Name. That Time Was. Haro and I was inside a nebula, but you couldn't tell. If anything, it seemed darker than home. If I squinted, though, and turned my head just right, I could see myself in the glass faceplate. Beyond, a few stars. That reflection, though. That was the clue. A hole in my cheek that wasn't there before, and growing. "You seeing this?" I said. "You're going to have to be more specific," came the reply. "Softer today, sympathetic. I always wanted kinder introductions, and Baya delivered. Short range has nothing. Long range is a mess." "A mess?" "Traffic. As expected. No way any piece of outer space could be expected to have traffic, but Baya wouldn't choose her words carelessly. I wiggled my toes, my hands, waited for her to elaborate. I couldn't see my limbs. This suit didn't have that flexibility. So the wriggling confirmed they were, in fact, still there. "Don't think I'm being rash. A micrometeor could take me out in a millisecond, and space's cold might numb me faster than my scattered brain could figure out what happened. And don't ask me why my brain was scattered. Refresh days do that." "You're talking about the approaching craft right here?" Baya said, and my faceplate buzzed to a new life, a hum coinciding with acid green diodes lighting up before my eyes. The little motes zoomed around the oncoming craft, outlining it in perfect detail. The ship was now as large as my cheek, telling me the thing was coming real fast. "Is it on a collision course?" I asked. "Just as planned." "Right." I blinked my right eye 3 times in quick succession, blurring the outline around the incoming vessel. A simple menu popped up, one with 2 choices. Execute. Abort. I blinked both eyes and execute flashed white before dissipating. A new vibration shook through my suit, as if I'd strapped myself to a particularly violent massage table. Now that was something I could have used right about then, a good massage. My muscles were telling me they were fans of the movement, an easement to the sore bruises they bore from a victim of the refresh, I supposed. I could have asked Baya, but held back. She would have said something if I needed to know, and the less clutter upstairs the better. Easier to focus. The ship covered part of my nose now, my right eye. Well, my left in the reflection, but you know what I mean. "Looking good," Baya said. "Doing okay?" "As ever." The rumble grew more violent. My head went back, nestling into the helmet's soft cushion. Forward thrust, bringing me closer for a hot second until my view veered. A slow turn away, one bringing me in line with the oncoming ship, boosting my velocity. "Why aren't you out here?" I asked Baya. "Solo job," she replied. "You requested it." "I did?" Baya said nothing. The refresh hadn't left me with anything either. No reasons, anyway. Of Baya, I had her name, a warm impression, that soft voice. That's it. But when you do what I do, that's all you need. Getting close was just asking for trouble. Baya dumped me once we matched the vessel's velocity. In my shell suit, I screamed through space at a slight angle to the ship, a giant blot on the blackness. Running lights dotted the scaly, ridged hull, like a snake and a rosebush blotted together. I chuckled. "What?" Baya asked. "A problem?" "Just glad the refreshes don't take it all anymore." "I was tired of changing your diapers." I chuckled again. This time Baya laughed with me. Then she broke into a countdown, each number punctuated by the suit doing something new. A spin, a jet from the small packs on my back, the last of which shunted me into a full-on facing view of the place that was going to be my new home. The entry extended my way, a circular airlock spitting out a red landing platform, like a tongue dotted with little gold lights. The suit angled me in, accepting and giving data to the vessel. "Guess it likes me," I said. "Only because it doesn't know you." "It will." Bravado. I was prone to it, and no refresh could take that away from me. But then, when you spent your whole life crashing into the worst places in the galaxy, you had to keep something for yourself. You had to, because everyone else would try to rip it away. Stay close, yeah? I asked Baya as the shell suit glided over the landing ramp into the airlock. I'll be right off port. You need a rescue, just call. She hesitated, the airlock blinking red now that I was inside. Haro, this time, remember. Never knew anything else. The airlock shut, those tight doors blocking our chatter and leaving me floating in a cherry-soaked tunnel. A churning, sucking sound traveled through my suit, fresh air filling the space. In a moment, I'd go through the next door, I'd be inside. And then? Well, then I would see about the bodies. Every ship has its own story, and each one tells it differently. From the outside, framed against the stars, the Anhelon gave away its military history. The ridged hull, the divots where turrets long removed had once sat. Bland stretches where patched-over docking bays lay hidden. Even the engine wash, a dirty blue-white, told of maintenance neglected, sturdy old parts pushed into overtime. The corridor beyond the airlock added new chapters, first in its music. I clambered free from the shell suit with the help of extra hands, their fingers moving fast to undo the vacuum seals, and let me breathe the first breath of Anhelon air. With it came the trembling, consistent beat of a drummer at practice, at play. Bouncing with it, fitful but picking up confidence as my suit popped apart, came a trumpet. Then, rarest of all, a bass's deep, steady walk. The trio wasn't visible, but my searching look must have been evident to my helper as she laughed. We pipe every performance through the ship, she said. It's a reminder. A reminder of what? If every ship has a story, so does every face, and their fragments lingered as I looked at this one. The lines and dimples suggested a medicated aging, as did the thin hair, gray at the tips before fading into a chocolate brown at the roots. Her eyes, behind the corneal lenses, flashed with a serious edge, the sight that comes to someone who's seen things they chose not to forget. The rest of her fell away into a catcher's mitt, the suit ready to dash out and grab me if my landing failed. She wore it well, quick enough in its thick bands to free me from mine. That we're still alive, she said, then laughed again, quieter this time. Dramatic, I know, but after everything it helps. And the players? Our graduates, the ones we're letting loose. Her name's Maisie Jones, as old-fashioned a moniker as I'd come across out here. She played a role on the Anhelon best described as the every woman, the person people came to when they needed help, or a secret kept. Which is why you're here, Maisie said to me as we walked. Ships like the Anhelon keep things stable thanks to focused directional magnets. After I'd pulled off my shell suit, Maisie had given me 2 strips for my boots. The little guys, pink and sparkled, a creative choice, stuck fast to the smooth area in my central soles and bonded with the ship. As I moved, those strips read my intentions and made their best guess as to whether I wanted to jump, walk, or run. At first, there'd been a lot of accidents with those things. I still watched the old videos when I wanted a clean laugh. Now everyone was all too happy to give up the rotating limbs. Made for cheaper builds, fewer errors when it came to artificial gravity. Maisie herself wore a typical uniform covered with the strips, each one that same glittering pink set against navy fabric, as if she was some bubblegum zebra. But they'd add the weight, keep her limbs from flailing, keep her muscles in shape. Where are they? I asked. We'll get there, Maisie said. Have to take the long way, you understand. I do. Not everyone wants you here, Haro. Don't forget that.
Chapter 2.
For all its bulk, the Anhelon didn't do much to distinguish itself in the first few minutes. Maisie led me through quiet cargo holds, my chosen arrival airlock apparently dumped in among the storage slots. Easier, so Maisie said, to keep my coming on the quiet side. Why's that necessary? I asked as we walked among stacked crates, many with their indicators beeping full capacity. The Anhelon was well stocked. Didn't you hire me? Some of us. What's that mean? Maisie glanced at me, frowning. I thought you would be more savvy. I gather information and act on it, that's what you're paying me for. Okay, not me, but the people who kept my little nebula outpost afloat, who supplied me with new entertainment, gave Baya the upgrades she needed to... Well, some things I didn't dig into. What Baya said she needed, what my employer said I required, I accepted. Kept things easy. Then you should know the Anhelon's always been an experiment, Maisie said. It's a refuge and a war zone rolled into one. Sounds dangerous for a spaceship. One we believe in. Who's this we? The same we that hired me? While I spoke, I noted the names on the crates, the makers and shippers, not the usual suspects. Whomever ran the Anhelon took their provisions from smaller worlds, minor manufacturers. They'd pay a higher price but dodge scrutiny or maybe get some tweaks to product the big boys wouldn't touch. There's only one we, Maisie said, the directors. Are you one? I am. I could sense Maisie withdrawing as I kept up the question fusillade. She shrank away, those answers coming increasingly clipped. An invited guest turning into a hostile occupant, but why so fast? Proper polite protocol made its nudge from the oft-ignored region of my manners. Sorry, am I moving too fast? I asked. Maisie winced. Not that, but I think you'll be better off if you come at this clean. The bodies, you mean? The students, yes, I know how being told things can taint an investigation. There was a mystery. Maisie, hinting at one thing after another. What students? The graduates. Is that why they piped that trio's music through the ship? A sort of tribute, thank you, or concession. And what investigation? Those questions came and went unasked as we went through another door, ditching the cargo bays with Maisie's keycard. We entered a three-pronged intersection, with the leftward path taking us back to the engines, manufacturing, and, oddly enough, culinary. Straight would cut across the ship towards the greenhouses and pharmacies, while going right gave us Anhelon's vastness in a straight-on shot through every living area, every societal need, a civilization ship like this could want. Straight, Maisie said. The bodies, they're in cold storage. Moved from the scene? The door to the greenhouse shunted aside. A narrow, squat room awaited with nothing in it. Air purification. Smart to keep a bacteria barrier between the filthy people and the flora. Again, Maisie tapped her keycard. She wore it about her neck on a lanyard, and a fizzing, hissing cycle started. We didn't have a choice, Maisie said. They were starting to rot. A long time then? Our locals didn't want to touch it. We tried. They refused. Which is why you're here. I thought you were the directors. The cycle completed. The next door slid open, and with it came humidity's dense wall. Loam and fresh flowers mingled. I began sweating. So did Maisie. But we walked in anyway. The greenhouse greeted us with manicured rows, tables set at waist height and managed by magnets. Pots, troughs, and soil-filled beds lingered, the dirt restrained with plastic shields across every spot not taken up by a plant stalk. Beneath the tables sat bags and bags of reprocessed nitrogen and fertilizer. I was pretty sure it didn't come from animals. Survival in space required compromises. Not everyone sees it that way, Maisie said, leading me in and making an immediate break to the left, walking past the rows upon rows of greenery till we hit the last one. Anhelon's been flying for a long time. Nobody wants to switch? The age question went by the wayside a long time ago, a function of gene splicing. A simple update done in an afternoon once a person hit the age they preferred to stop, though enough trauma, enough radiation could still screw you up. What was hailed as a miracle brought with it 1,000, 1,000,000 complications, not the least of which was those in power never leaving it. Of course I'd been zapped. My employers required it. If there were someone else available, Maisie said, then I think a few would take the chance. But that would mean trusting another person. And that's difficult. Because? There's a lot you need to learn, but I can't tell you here. Listening ears. Maisie's look gave her words focus, and I followed them to a man with big hedge clippers working the next aisle over, cleansing some overreaching lemon trees from the path. Every snip sent a twig floating into the air, one the man would then grab and stuff in a container belted to his waist. Those twigs would get mulched and dropped back on the same soil that had fed their growth in the first place. The circle of life, or something like that. I gave Maisie her caution and kept quiet until we passed the man, but the opportunity for more questions didn't come quick. Another cross-cut path intersected ours, opening into a small square. Several orange carts, their wheels magnetized, sat stocked with garden implements. A couple box robots, a simple kind with treads meant to carry squat loads from one spot to another, waited to be called. With them stood a working trio, trowels and baskets at the ready, so perfect an image of their job that I would have believed them there by chance, save for the way they all looked at us. "Maisie," said one, a man with his hair shaved into an unusual three-pronged approach, with his head a single center stripe and two frizzy chops on either cheek. "What did we tell you?" "I heard. I just didn't listen," Maisie said, not stopping her walk. "It's not your call." "That's where you're wrong." Maisie spun, jabbed out a finger at the man. "Flask, you say one more dumb thing and I swear I'll toss you out an airlock." "Like to see you try." "Right here? You want to do this now?" Flask, his hands covered in dirty gloves, cracked his knuckles. His grin missed a few teeth, a surprising choice, but mutilation had its fans these days. "Let's go, Maisie." My guide glanced at me, winced again. "Sorry, Haro. This'll just take a second." "Do what you have to do." The two stepped towards each other, Maisie furious and determined. Flask every bit the cocky ass he'd declared himself to be. The other two gardeners behind watched with bland curiosity, just like me. Yet even as Flask rose to throw the first punch, all the lights went out. Black, everywhere, followed by a thud, a snapped, angry shout. I pressed myself back against the rear tables, felt a strawberry leaf tickle my elbow. After that first beat, there wasn't another noise. I tried to listen, thought about calling for Maisie when the light snapped back on. The small plaza sat empty, not a soul in sight. And in the middle, near one of those quiet crate bots, a bloody spatter. Chapter 3. The First Thing. To do when a situation screws with expectations is to take a beat, particularly if death wasn't coming at you. I took that breath in the garden in one. The blood splatter on the floor ahead wasn't matched by spray on the nearby leaves. No torn fabric or smudges either. I hadn't heard much of a struggle, which meant if Maisie had been taken by those three, it'd be a quick endeavor. Overhead, the greenhouse's UV lamps hid what were surely cameras. Getting a look at the footage would be a good call, but such a brazen kidnapping, or murder, meant the trio had to believe their actions would be dismissed, even approved of. What that meant for Maisie's opinion of the ship's directors and their vote in favor of my presence. Well, I wasn't helpless. My outfit sans suit came with productive trappings. Pockets everywhere on my pants, a belt laden with hooks for tools, and a thick shirt with more pouches sewn on the inside. I reached into the slot on my right thigh and pulled out a little square with a greenscale screen. A slider on the front extended a needle, one I dipped into the blood spatter before sliding it back. The green screen lit up, the box vibrating as the scan began. Reading the blood would take a few minutes, time I didn't care to spend hanging at the murder scene. The gardener with the hedge clippers back towards the cargo hold flashed in my memory. No need to tackle those knives straight up. Thankfully, a solution to my need to be anywhere else waited before me. A perfect rectangular door, a shift from the more common circles seen on starships, but perhaps the greater height made the change in design worth it. A nearby panel showed a grass-green opening door, the universal signal for open. At least I wasn't locked in with the flowers. Though as soon as I tapped the panel and that door revealed what waited on the other side, I wished I had been. Maisie had suggested a walk-around route, but given that decision had ended with her disappearing, changing up the plan seemed prudent. Go where they don't expect you to be and all that. The implication that there were people hostile to me on this ship didn't make me twitch. It was an expectation. Even so, the other side challenged the stoicism Baya put towards the top of every refresh. The bland cargo hold and side halls died in contrast to the characters greeting me. For the garden's out-of-the-way locale, the door opened into a main boulevard. The broad stretch stood as wide as the cargo holds I'd wandered through, its space filled with mismatched miasma instead of crates and containers. Not 2 meters beyond my face stood a defunct loading robot, several meters tall and looming, though the battery pack near its middle had been removed. 6 metal arms dangled, several missing the claws, and all sporting scrabbled graffiti in a language I couldn't discern at a glance. Behind it sat what must have been a garden bed, save the dirt now overflowed with refuse. Plastic wrappers and casual trash weren't all that common on starships due to a need to recycle, but bent and broken metal, ceramic dishware, and torn cloth made a medley in the tan dirt. More sigils lined the bed's container. Any closer inspection of those symbols vanished with the noise, the people, the churn in view. Groups ran, walked, talked, and lived. Their outfits and colors splashed a world unfamiliar to the refresh I'd been given, with wonder coming first, followed by apprehension. What I didn't understand could, and probably would, be fatal. First, a young duo lingering around the dead loader robot. The two young boys seemed to be passing a paper pamphlet back and forth, drawing on it with a marker. Paper in itself was rare enough, and a literal marker in a universe stuffed with screens threw me. The pair noticed, both looking my way, and I saw, etched in white on their cheeks, a straight line slashed through with 3 perpendicular blue marks. Another symbol I didn't know, but I slotted it away. "Who are you?" one boy asked, laying a heavy weight on the second word, as if accosting a vermin. "A visitor," I replied. "Ugly one," said the other, again slamming the second word. "Where'd you come from?" "Doesn't matter." The two boys glanced at each other, then blitzed off. The pamphlet they'd been holding drifting free in the flight, floating down to land at my feet. Never one to let free information go to waste, I bent down, picked it up. Aside from the boys scrawling, a single line sat in printed type on the front. "We are the truth." Beneath it sat, again, the single slanted white line with blue crosscuts. I nodded, held off a sigh. If there was one thing I knew to loathe, it was a cult. But here we were. A thunk drew my gaze left, past drifting people in all manner of outfit. Some, like the gardeners, in uniforms that seemed to have some official application. Others in rags, still more in snappy faux leathers, metal beads, and wild colors. Pinks, oranges, sprayed both in hair and in swirling tattoos along skin. I noted studs in ears, cheeks, and around wrists. Here and there, monocular devices wrapped eyes in red and green screens. The thunk came from one of those, the screen getting bashed off an older man. That alone, with our gene splicing, was notable, who crumpled against a sudden attack by 3 others. The assailants had hoods bleeding down to black jackets whose back bore not what I was expecting. No white line and blue crosscuts, but instead an orange circle with a red star in the center. They threw a couple punches without drawing more than casual glances from others in the corridor, then walked away from their victim without another word. "Need a hand?" I asked, walking over to the battered man. Up close, his long and splintered hair bled into patchy stubble. The monocular covered a lazy eye, and as I watched, the man popped the screen back in. As it clicked into place, he focused on me before flinching away, muttering that I ought to leave him alone. "See, that's my problem," I said, bending down and putting a hand on the man's shoulder. "Everyone wants me to leave them alone, and that's not helping me do my job." "You're going to get me killed," the man said, a whining voice, more than a little lilt to the words. I did a mental time check, figured it wasn't so early that a man on life's bad side might have had a couple rounds. "They're watching you. You know who I am?" "Everyone does." "Great," I said. "How about we go someplace, have a chat without so many eyes?" "There is no such place," the man said. But when I didn't take my hand off his shoulder, he sighed. "You're not going to leave me alone?" "Gotta get some answers, buddy." Okay, then help me up." The man led me back towards the cargo holds. Along the way, we definitely caught stares. I saw a few more orange circles but held off the interrogation for the moment. Instead, I focused on the buzzing in my pocket, the fluid analyzer finishing its read. Keeping close to the man, I fished the device out and took a snap glance at the screen. The blood I'd snagged was flush with toxins, some known, some not. What was clear, though, is that anyone with blood like this should have been dead. Yet Maisie and all 3 of those gardeners had been very much alive. Chapter 4. My mind went fuzzy when I looked beyond the refresh's boundaries. Broader memory, core knowledge. You'd never forget instinct, like how to pick up a fork or jog. Words and languages could get replaced, but galactic common had made the need for all that almost obsolete. What tickled the edges, though, were the references. Farhad, who gave his name less like a title and more like a curse, dredged us from the site of his humiliation along the boulevard towards the cargo holds and the residence he claimed waited there. We continued to draw stares as we walked, and I couldn't be sure whether the attention was due to Farhad's resemblance to a bloody corpse or my own apparently well-known place on the Anhelon. Either way, I tried to meet every damn look I could with a curious return of my own. Baya made sure every refresh came with an eidetic memory, so I slotted all those faces, bearing a variety of skin tones, selected ages, tattoos, and oddball tech, into my biobanks. Few bothered looking away either, in a show of confidence putting the Anhelon's civilization well outside the norm. Most people, when they met the eyes of someone unafraid to take a life, glanced away. Anyway, Farhad's apartment came after several hallway splits. The metal panels here had long since said goodbye to formal gray, with murals painted on top of others, an ever-evolving art. Lights kept themselves to dotted diodes in the corners, a concession to creativity's demands in that even the ceiling found itself illustrated. Didn't need any more evidence that the Anhelon had been flying for a long time. What fuzzed me was Farhad's apartment itself, a place he buzzed into with a door code. The portal slid aside, and I could not tell if what I saw was small, normal, or better for someone who appeared to exist as a punching bag. Baya would give me that general knowledge if she thought it necessary, but standard living arrangements on starships appeared beyond my scope, so my eye twitched as I tried to place the single bed, the smoothed living space filled with a couch, a table with a single chair, and a VR treadmill among the galaxy's scope. "It ain't much," Farhad said, affecting a dubious drawl and walking in. "But it's mine." "Is it?" I asked. "Yours?" Farhad glanced back, surprised, and I saw his left arm tuck something small back into his pocket. He'd taken advantage of my momentary lapse as I tried to place the apartment, done something stupid. What that was, I wasn't sure, and I didn't want to press Farhad on it right away. There were questions that needed answering first, and with a heaving collapse on his small, clean, beige couch, Farhad gave in. Well, he tried. "The directors brought you on, yeah?" Farhad opened when I told him to spill it. "They're always doing crap like this, going over the heads of the people who really matter." "And who are they?" Farhad pointed at the shiner coloring in his left eye. Anhelon had a job, scouting out mineral fields on the outer edges. We'd find one, then establish a claim. Market for the drones and future mining bases. Another fuzz threatened, but I pushed it away with intuition. Big ship for something like that? Sure, until you remember most of this came later. We started small, but they kept plugging more things on. "The directors?" "At first." Farhad nodded behind me. "Get me a drink, man." My impression that Farhad already had a few downed remained, but cooperation deserved a reward. I'd taken the single seat at the table, so I rose, did a half-turn to the cabinet, and pulled it open. 3 sparkling clean glasses. Farhad's whole domain seemed ready to advertise, so clear of filth and the ravages of daily life. Greeted me. Next to them sat a half-empty bottle of stardust. I took it, held it towards Farhad, who nodded. He kept nodding as I poured, as I filled first one glass and then a second. The man held out both hands when I'd put the bottle back, and he took a sip from both in turn when I handed them over. "Sorry," Farhad said after a small cough. "Needed this, and it's too expensive to give to strangers." "Don't want it." Farhad laughed. Some stardust spilled, landed on his shorts. The liquid sparkled as it fell, some chemical compound delighting in the freedom. Baya hadn't given me any impressions on how it tasted, so I was left to wonder. "Anyway," Farhad was saying, "the Anhelon keeps taking odd jobs, keeps growing because now the directors are seeing ways to make more profit. We're still surveying minerals, but now we're hauling cargo, now we're rehabilitating certain people, now." "Certain people?" "Let's just say they were given a hard life, need a chance to put themselves together, and the Anhelon had space for that." Farhad took another gulp from both glasses. Until some of those people decided they wanted to do things different is all." The man liked to talk vague. The clock, too, was ticking. Maisie would need finding, and I'd need a place to hole up with Anhelon's records, see what I could glean from the official documents. Not to mention the bodies. I needed to get something useful and fast or leave. What about the dead students, I asked. Who killed them? Farhad cocked his head. Killed? Murdered? Sure. Murdered. Another laugh. Oh boy, they didn't tell you nothing, did they? Questions abounded there, but I went for the easier way out. Farhad kept gulping down that stardust like he wanted to blast himself away from here, and the thing he'd done with the device in his pocket had me feeling uneasy. People could talk in generalities, could be vague because they didn't know, because they were hiding something, or, worst, because they were buying time. Farhad, what's going on here? The man tipped one stardust glass into the other, then drank the refilled single down all the way. His glassy, bruised, beaten face grinned at me as he slouched back into the couch. My man, you really shouldn't have taken this job. I stood, every sense screaming to leave. The door slid open as I approached, Farhad doing some combination of a chuckle and a sob behind me. The people waiting on the other side gave every impression they meant me bodily harm. I saw a bat, shock flechettes, and more than a few metal knuckles. The lead standing square before his posse, a studded, shiny black coat shrouding a pink and silver dye job, with that orange circle sigil pasted on one cheek, had a twisted smile, one that begged to be punched. So I did. Chapter 5. My left hook. Went for the gut, interrupting what might have been a planned threat, boast, or, for all I knew, a sales pitch for the Anhelon's newest cookbook. Instead, the punk posse leader doubled over and spewed his breakfast. Or was it lunch? I'd lost track of time. All over my boots. While he emptied his guts, I emptied his left pocket with my right hand, stepping in close to make any flechette shot an exercise in random chance. That left pocket held the loot I needed, and I shot it quick, hitting a rube to my right, just outside the door, who'd chosen ripped-up cargo pants as his assault gear. Stylish to someone somewhere, it left enough skin for the flechette's prickles to find their homes, the man collapsing in a wild twitch. I noticed, too, the magnetized boots meant the poor man's feet stayed locked to the floor, bending those ankles in a bad way. Captain Vomit recovered into a half-hearted headbutt, one he telegraphed with a guttural growl. I loved it when people gave away their attacks with pointless noise, and repaid the gesture by sweeping up my flechette-launching right hand into a shove, banging Vomit's charging skull into the doorframe's side. He wavered for a wobbly second before collapsing much like his pal, a drop that should have left me an easy target for the other two neon-splashed bums behind him. Except my left hand had other ideas, punching the door's button. Two flechettes fired as the door slammed shut, its hard shell catching all the spikes save one, which flew through beyond my shoulder and smacked Farhad, drawing a curse and little else. The door had cut the flechette's wire, rendering the tiny dart nothing more than a down payment on what I'd be delivering to Farhad later. I didn't suffer ambushes, nor did I waste time. My left index finger tapped the door panel again and the portal slid aside. I chucked the fired flechette with my right hand, the blocky mechanism smacking right into the face of someone who'd neglected to move in the moment he'd had. The man stumbled back, buying me room to step onto Captain Vomit and slide into a left kick. The magnet screwed me. My kick should have snapped. Instead, the pull stuck my move, delayed it by too long a millisecond, letting the left hitter get his bat, a smart replacement for the flechette, into a swat at my head. I threw my left arm up to block, felt the hit as it smacked my elbow, sent that arm into a numb void. As my left foot finally sucked free, the bat's hit left me unbalanced, a situation magnified by Captain Vomit's less than stable position as my foothold, and I fell to the right. Learning quick, I jerked up my right foot as I fell, freeing it from the ship's magnets, letting me land square on my back next to the flechette-shocked scumbag. Batman attempted to navigate Captain Vomit's body for a killer swing, while his buddy, shaking off the flechette blow, recovered into a lurching advance. A grim situation ameliorated by my current landing spot, next to the one jerk who'd not fired his flechette because, well, he'd been shot by yours truly first. I scooped up the implement with my right, fired it at Batman as he loomed over me, hands holding the metal bar in a pose I'd otherwise describe as heroic. Both hands over his head, bar bent down his back, ready for a fight-ending overhead smash. What that pose gained in impressive imagery, it lacked in any defense whatsoever. The flechette darts plugged into Batman's face, already twisting in stunned shock, and the man dropped on top of Captain Vomit in a twitching collapse. I pressed my feet down, used those magnets and a core section honed by Baya's relentless workouts to snap upright, just in time to catch the last man's wild swing on my right shoulder. Pain popped, a fun mirror to my numbed left arm, and I made the call that a fistfight with this guy wouldn't be in my best interest. Instead, as last man set his arms into a boxer's stance, an image at frank odds with his bright yellow jacket, pants, and orange spiked hair, I spat in his face. According to Baya's data, imparted into my tactical skill set with the refresh, few people expected a wet slop to strike their face mid-fight. Last man numbered among that population, making a strangled, disgusted noise and employing his well-honed stumble backwards. I pressed the advantage, lumbering into a right shoulder charge, hitting last man as he finished smearing the spit off his nose. I replaced the gunk with my thick shoulder, crunching into last man and driving him into the hallway's opposite wall. He hit, steadied himself, and caught my knee in his nether regions. Those eyes popped so wide, accompanied by a gurgling groan, that I'd wondered if I'd delivered an accidental mortal blow. That turn, and the potential complications, were salved when last man simply slumped to the ground, tears welling in those eyes, and held up his hands in the universal, flat-palmed gesture of surrender. I took a quick glance round, confirmed the other three were in various states of unconscious, groaning sludge, then picked up last man by his jacket collar. The material proved sturdy enough to hold together, nothing more embarrassing than kicking off a brutal interrogation only for a shirt to rip. And last man offered me a grimacing visage promising more useful intel than Farhad had provided. That data would not be gleaned here, however. "We're taking a walk," I said, and shoved last man down the hall, away from the boulevard and deeper into the Anhelon's apartment maze. I had no idea where I was going, no idea if what waited for me down these intersecting halls was more traps or more answers. But with last man's banana jacket a beacon, we walked, and I hoped. One thing at least was certain. This job wasn't going as planned. This is the end of a long and silent scream, Part 1. Keep a lookout for Part 2 soon, and for more adventures, check out blackkeybooks.com. Thanks for listening.